Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews. We have 6 new shows to get to. Finally, I'm going to talk about Picard. I know that came on a couple weeks ago, but we sort of missed a week because I was sick in January, so I'm kind of trying to pace these every 5 or 6 days or so rather than every week to kind of catch up. But we have 2 biggies here. Picard we're going to talk about, and also 911 Lone Star, which is the spinoff of the popular 911 Fox series. And then 4 other shows as well, both on television and on streaming. But first, let's get to the news as we do. First up, we like to talk about cancellations and renewals, so let's start there. I guess we'll start with the cancellations. The 2 highest profile ones are Ray Donovan and The Crown. So The Crown is on Netflix, and they, I guess, are still... I don't watch The Crown, but I know it's supposed to be great. But they, swap out the cast every couple of years. So they have announced they're going to end with season 5, and British actress Imelda Staunton is going to be the final queen when season 5 airs, probably in 2021. Netflix, of course, known for kind of chopping their shows off at the knees. Grace and Frankie just put up its final season, and that was like a super popular show, but even that only got to 6 years. I guess Orange is the New Black is still the longest running show then, because I think that got 7 seasons. So here, even though The Crown is very popular, they're going to stop at 5. I think they might do the same thing with Stranger Things, because even though that's like super popular and one of Netflix's top performers, it's mostly about these kids, and they're getting older. Soon they're going to be really like in their late teens. Some of them might be already, I don't know. So I feel like Stranger Things might only get 5 seasons as well, even though it's certainly one of Netflix's flagship shows at this point. So The Crown is leaving. In addition to that, since we're on Netflix, I guess, 2 shows that I reviewed in the last 2 months. One was put up in December, one was put up at the very beginning of January. They are both canceled after just 1 season. That's Spinning Out and Soundtrack. Soundtrack, I hated. I thought the concept was okay, but it was like a musical where they were just lip syncing to famous songs. So it was like the anti-Glee almost. Like it had similar themes, I guess. Different stories in people's lives, but it was more like soundtrack of your mind, and then you would lip sync it. I didn't think it worked. It showed up in my bottom 5 of 2019, so not sorry to see that one go. Goodbye, Soundtrack. Spinning Out I liked. I don't think it's something that I will keep watching or even finish, the first season of. But I gave it like a B or a B minus, something in that range. I liked it okay. It was an ice skating drama about this, kind of washed up ice skater from the Olympics that is sort of trying to start anew. It was okay, but I think, what we're seeing here is Netflix is really getting aggressive in, championing the series that work well for them and just dropping the axe on shows that they are underwhelmed by the performance of. And again, Netflix doesn't specifically give us most ratings or metrics. They kind of keep that to themselves, as most streamers do. But they've been trickling out a few in the last 6 months to a year. And I talked about some of that in a recent TV news segment about how they're sort of monitoring that. And what they've done now is, this is sort of a tangent off the renewals and cancellations, but I'll get back to it, I promise. But what they're doing now is they've changed even their own metrics to, it used to be if you watched 70% of a show or a movie, then it counted as a view. Now they are saying as long as you've watched more than 2 minutes of it, then it counts as a view, because it counts as you purposely were watching that and it didn't just like come on when when you were watching something else and then that ended and this new thing came on. If you're spending more than 2 minutes watching it, then that counts as a view. That to me is absolute crap. That's garbage. So they're saying like The Witcher, for example, which is the first show kind of under these new metrics. The Witcher was viewed by I don't even remember the number that they put out because it was so stupid. It was like 45 million, homes or something in the first 30 days. And it's like, or maybe even the first 7 days, I don't know. But whatever it was just like, it's a meaningless statistic to me. I mean, I guess it helps them gauge, if they released that kind of data for all of their shows, I guess it would tell us, okay, well, here's how it stacks up with their other shows. But they're like, oh, The Witcher's our most watched show ever. Well, yeah, if you're going to change the entire metrics to if you watch 2 minutes of an episode, it counts as a view. Like, that's nonsense. I mean, that's the length of a commercial break on a network show. I believe Nielsen with network shows marks it if you've watched more than, it's either 10 or 15 minutes. Which I think makes more sense. I mean, 10 minutes, even of a half-hour show, that's a third of the show. Okay, that's fine. You're clearly at least sampling it. But I think it's in 15-minute increments with Nielsen. But anyway, 2 minutes is complete stupidity. I think that's a horrible system. So I hope that goes away, but it won't. But at least it will allow them to release information that we can stack against itself. Like, okay, well, The Witcher got 50 million views, but, Spinning Out only got 5 million views, or whatever. It's such a stupid thing, but anyway. So they've been canceling a lot of their one-season shows lately. I think they canceled 6 of them in the last year, or maybe even more. But, yeah, I guess, look, they're a network, really, just like anybody else. I mean, they are paid to subscribe into, but they're not going to spend money on shows that aren't performing. And soundtrack, specifically, I would imagine, because of the music rights, was probably way up there price-wise. Spinning Out, probably not so much, but I guess either way, neither of them performed. So let's get to Ray Donovan, which is the other sort of surprise cancellation. Surprise to everyone, because it just finished up season 7. It ended on a cliffhanger, and now that's it. There's no season 8, which I think is disrespectful from Showtime. If they had an inkling they were going to do that, talk to the producers and, have them wrap up a storyline or two, or whatever, or give them, a shortened season 8. Okay, we'll be back for 6 episodes in season 8. I've never watched Ray Donovan. I understand it's a great show, and I've certainly always been curious about it, but I think it's, I always hate when a long-running show gets canceled with no notice and they end on a cliffhanger. I just think it's horrible. So hopefully they can be convinced to maybe do a TV movie or something just to wrap up some loose ends. I always applaud networks that do that. I know it's worked for a couple of different projects. I think Timeless was probably the last one that they did that with. But, I think Showtime also is losing now 3 of its flagship shows within the next year or so, because Shameless is going to be one more season after the current one, and that will be over. And then Homeland, I don't think it's done yet. I think it's about to put its last season on. Again, I don't watch Homeland. I do watch Shameless. I'm way behind on it. I think I'm on season 3, but still. But Shameless has been running now. This will be the 11th season it goes before it cancels. So that's probably Showtime's longest running show ever, I would think. I'm currently watching Weeds right now because that reboot is coming at some point, I guess, this year. But I'll probably put up some season reviews of Weeds for you. But that ran 8. And I can't think of anything that's run longer than 10 years on Showtime other than Shameless. So they're losing that. They're losing Homeland. And now Ray Donovan. So obviously, I don't know. Are they going away from those types of dramas? I mean, they've brought back The L Word. They're doing Work in Progress, which is about a trans person. that I reviewed very highly. It was top 10 of the year for me. So maybe they're shifting their focus a little bit to more of that sort of stuff and not so much the hardcore drama of things like Homeland. I don't know. And then Shameless was just kind of getting long in the tooth. I mean, 11 years of any show is a long time, so that makes sense. But Ray Donovan was just such a surprise. And then the only other thing that got canceled that I noticed was the Mel Robbins show. This is a talk show that airs in the daytime. It was one that I didn't review in the fall when I reviewed things like the Kelly Clarkson show because I don't think it airs here in Harrisburg. It's not in the whole country, and some markets have it like at 3 in the morning. Like it just underperforms. It's, I guess, sort of a self-help type show. I'm not familiar with Mel Robbins, but I guess she's an author that does a lot of that sort of like healing self-help stuff. So maybe they were going kind of for that, like, I don't know, Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil kind of market. Whereas of course Kelly Clarkson is more, of an Ellen demographic, with the celebrity guests and the fun games and stuff. But it was getting about a third of the ratings of Kelly Clarkson and about half the ratings of Tamron Hall, who is the other new talk show this year. And both of those got renewed already for next season. So they're both coming back. And then next season, we're also going to see Drew Barrymore with her own talk show. We talked about that before. Nick Cannon has a talk show coming out. We've talked about that. So, so I guess they're making some way for that. But I don't know. No love lost for me on the Mel Robbins show. I don't even know her, but wanted to report that anyway. Then renewed, we have 2 shows renewed for you. One is Disney Plus renewing The World According to Jeff Goldblum, which was a fun show. I watched the first 2 episodes of that when I did my Is Disney Plus Worth It review. So that's a fun one. And then CBS has renewed The Young and the Restless for 4 more years, which is substantial. I mean, first of all, even shows like, Jeopardy and stuff, shows that are going to be on forever, don't usually get 4-year renewals. That's pretty impressive. And especially, for a daytime soap when that whole genre is certainly on the decline. I don't want to say it's dead, but the reason I don't want to say that is because I didn't realize this, but The Young and the Restless gets about 4 million viewers a day. And that includes like the delayed viewing for up to 7 days with DVRs and stuff, which they do count. But it doesn't include things like if you watch it on CBS All Access. So it probably is, a bit higher than that even. But that kind of blew me away. 4 million people a day on the soap opera. Some of those daytime shows, I'll tell you what, because I know Judge Judy, she does, 10 million plus every single day. And so does Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. So, it's funny, like in the state of decline of, primetime shows, 10 million would be like, there's only a few shows that get 10 million views. NCIS is one of them. Last year Big Bang Theory was. If you include all the delayed viewing, there are shows that do that. This Is Us does it, The Good Doctor. But for the most part, 10 million views is like insane for primetime these days. But 4 million on a daytime soap, I was blown away by that. So it makes sense. They want to hold these guys into a contract. A lot of them have been with the show for 15 years or more. So I'm not sure exactly how young they are, but Restless maybe. But it's been the number 1 daytime soap for over 30 years. So in the press release, CBS made a statement, something to the effect of the last show that had better ratings than Young and the Restless during the day was, Ronald Reagan was president and the Berlin Wall was still standing. So I thought that was funny. But yeah, for over 3 decades, it's been the number 1 daytime soap. So good for them for 4 more years of that. All right, so let's move on to a couple other things. Quibi, we've been talking about this. It premieres in April, and it's these little bite-sized chunks of shows. Each episode is going to be 6 to 10 minutes only. And because of that, it's driving a ton of really top A-list celebrities to it. And I revealed some of them before, but the latest addition is John Travolta and Kevin Hart are going to star in their own show on there. Kevin Hart's going to play a hyper-realized version of himself, and he is, I guess, going back to acting school or something, and Travolta is playing not himself, but another person, and he's going to be his mentor. So, should be interesting. I'm very intrigued to see how Quibi works and how good it's going to be. I mean, they've gotten a huge list of names, but episodes in 6 to 10 minute chunks sounds good. I mean, obviously attention spans are getting shorter by the day here, so maybe it will be a huge success. It's certainly got the talent. They've also announced that they do have a host now for their new Punk'd revival, and it's going to be Chance the Rapper, who I don't really know much about. I mean, I've heard a couple of his songs in passing, but I certainly wouldn't call myself a fan. But I saw him host SNL back in October, and the musical portion that he did was not all that great, but I thought he was very funny, and he's got a very charismatic personality, so I could see him doing a good version of Punk'd. And they're also reviving Singled Out, which we've talked about on the show as well. Keke Palmer is going to be the host of that, who I love. I've loved her since she was a young star, so she should bring some fun to that as well. And before we get to the reviews, I just want to talk about this week in reboots. There's a few out there. Lost Boys, which I guess is not technically a reboot. Well, or maybe they did have a show. Maybe it was like a syndicated show. But anyway, this is obviously more based on the film from the late 80s, the vampire film. And surprise, surprise, it's going to the CW, which makes sense because they do all that vampire stuff. And I think it's from the same people that did Vampire Diaries, so it fits right in their wheelhouse. And they're also doing a revival of Kung Fu, which is a classic 70s show. I believe Lost Boys has just gotten a pilot order, and Kung Fu is going directly to series, if I am remembering that correctly. So, which means that basically they ordered a pilot for Lost Boys. If it's no good, they'll just pass on it. But Kung Fu, I believe, is coming straight to series, or they've already seen the pilot and liked it. So either of those. And then the other reboot I'm not familiar with, but Disney Plus is bringing back The Quest, which is a reality competition show that aired on ABC years ago. And it was like half role-playing, half competition. It takes place at like a castle. The Disney Plus version is going to age it down a bit and have teens be the competitors as opposed to adults. Again, I wasn't even familiar with this. I don't remember hearing about it, but it got really good ratings on ABC, just nobody watched it. So I guess concept-wise, it's a hit. And Disney Plus, of course, they owned ABC, so it's their show anyway to do with what they will. So they're bringing it back, which I don't know if that means they'll start airing the older shows on Disney Plus or Hulu or something, because they own Hulu as well, because Disney owns everything. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I am intrigued by the concept, I suppose. But obviously, it completely escaped me when it was on ABC. So I don't know. But they're kind of beefing up their reality slate on Disney Plus. Obviously, the big ticket item was The Mandalorian. But they have a couple shows I reviewed here. Not only the Jeff Goldblum show, but Encore, which I didn't like so much, but it's getting some love from a lot of people. And then they're gonna have like other shows in that vein, competition shows. There's going to be a show about behind the scenes of the Pixar shorts, I guess kind of like a How It's Made sort of thing, which should be fun. And there's some sort of like, how Amy Poehler and Nick Offerman do the Making It show on NBC. There's going to be some sort of builders show on Disney Plus for kids. I think I read Justin Long is going to host that, which would be great. I love him. I mean, it's not something I'll probably watch because I love Amy Poehler too, and I don't watch Making It. But but for people that love those sort of do-it-yourself reality shows, I'm sure they'll do a great job with it. But yeah, so all that is coming. Disney Plus is trying to beef up their slate of reality and non-scripted programming. Because I think, other than The Mandalorian and I guess the Marvel stuff that is coming, that they sort of premiered a clip of during the Super Bowl, I think the bulk of the scripted stuff that people want on Disney Plus is all the old movies. So I think it makes sense for them to go more in a sort of reality direction other than the very, very established brands of Star Wars and Marvel. I think that makes the most sense for them. But okay, so let's get into the reviews. I've got 6 reviews for you. So we're going to start with Picard and then move into Avenue 5, which is sort of dovetails with Picard because it's a sci-fi spoof on HBO. We've also got 911 Lone Star. We've got another Apple TV Plus offering. We haven't had one of those for a few weeks. Little America. And then we have 2 kid shows I want to cover with you, one on Netflix and one on Nickelodeon. So let's start with Picard. This is, of course, on CBS All Access. It's, all they've been touting forever. You can actually catch the first episode for free on YouTube for a limited time. I don't know when that runs out, but I watched it on YouTube last night because my CBS All Access subscription has lapsed, so I need to renew that. But in the meantime, I caught the premiere on YouTube, and you can as well. Obviously it's set in the Star Trek universe. We know this. Next Generation, Captain Picard. Okay, we know this. But what is this show going to be about? I don't think anybody really cared necessarily. I just thought they were like, oh, well, Picard's like one of the top captains, certainly for the entire franchise. I've always been a Picard man myself. When Next Generation came on, I was 10. So that was the captain I grew up with. Now, my dad loved the old series too, so Kirk was always out there. I was almost named James T. Kirk, by the way, or I guess I would have been James Kirk and then my last name. But still, so obviously my dad, a huge Star Trek fan. But Picard was always my captain. Next Gen was always my Star Trek show. And I've now seen a lot of the other ones with Merlin when we used to do, and Justin too, when we used to do the Trek reviews years ago on the Film Fanatics channel. But I think everybody was kind of just like, okay, well, we're in regardless of what it is or what's going on. We want to support Star Trek. We want to support, obviously, Patrick Stewart coming back as Picard. So here's the essential plot of the series as a whole, because it is much more serialized, it seems, than most of the Trek stuff before it. Because obviously, back in the day, most of it was just standalone episodes. Maybe you had a 2-parter. But here it seems like we may be chasing down a lot of stuff for the entire season. I'm not positive, but from everything I've read, it seems like that's the way it's going. And the premiere would lend itself to that because it is slow moving in terms of I thought the pacing was okay. I didn't find it to be a slog to get through. I didn't find it to be that slow, but compared to a lot of other Trek properties, the information drop was a lot slimmer in this episode. I think they could have probably packed the whole episode into maybe 15 or 20 minutes instead of 50 minutes. And it wouldn't have really missed any information. So that's what makes me think it's a story-long arc that they're going for here, not just standalone episodes. But essentially, it is set about 20 years after the event of the movie Nemesis, which, if I saw, I don't remember. So, I'm glad they sort of gave us some exposition there. The Commander Data has been destroyed. We see him at the beginning of the episode in a dream sequence or, a hologram experience, but I think it was more of a dream. That sort of ended that was at the end of Nemesis, which again, if I saw, I don't remember. So I'm glad they sort of told us about that. And then also the destruction of the planet Romulus, which was in J.J. Abrams' original Star Trek movie in 2009. So they're sort of playing off both of those things to get to where we are here in the episode. What else can I tell you? I don't want to give away spoilers. I don't do that, but there's this gal named Daj who is a biological synthetic sort of based on Data's mind that was created by, I guess the same person, so she's technically Data's daughter. But I can't give away too much really, but let's just say that I think the season is going to focus on her relationship with Data and what happens to her in the pilot, and Picard trying to solve the answers and solve the mysteries of that. I guess that's all I can really say. You know, I don't give spoilers on this show, but anyway, there's Picard is my favorite captain for so many reasons. I don't know if he's my favorite character in Star Trek. We actually did at one point a top 5 Star Trek characters, and I'm not sure if he came up at number 1 for me, but I think Spock is probably my favorite Star Trek character. But Picard is definitely up there, favorite captain for sure. Number 1, Patrick Stewart looks so good. His Picard in this is supposed to be like 90. Patrick Stewart in real life is in his mid-70s. He looks like he's 60. I mean, he looks exactly the same as he did, in the first X-Men movie 20 years ago. I mean, he looks so good. And it's great to see him back as Picard. Obviously, he's done it a little bit over the years through the movies, and maybe he's guested on a couple of the more recent Trek things. I don't honestly know, but he does not miss a beat here. He's so great as Captain. In the beginning of the episode, he's like being interviewed, which Picard is a very keep to himself kind of guy. He rarely gives interviews, but he grants one, and he just answering the questions in the methodical nature that he does. The very thoughtful. He doesn't just rattle off an answer, and I think that's kind of the pacing of the whole show. I mean, I think the show is very deliberate and thoughtful in its slowness. I think they're going for a slow brew kind of thing, but that's not to say that it's not action based, because there were a couple of like really good, solid fight scenes in the first episode. That maybe even more fighting than we're used to from Trek, or at least more choreographed fighting. I mean, you think back to the old original Star Trek days, and it's very, sort of cheesy and comical. This is not that at all. This is more akin to the recent Abrams movies, I guess, than anything. But it comes in blips, like it's not. I think some of those Abrams movies were very action oriented, because I think they were trying to make Trek more of an action series than a sci-fi series, which I was okay with, because I really enjoyed those movies. But here, this is definitely slower and more methodical and more story driven than action driven, and I can respect that. I, for one, am excited to see where it goes. I do have to get my CBS All Access back, I suppose, to do that. I probably will do that when they get another new show to review. But yeah, in the meantime, I mean, I really enjoyed this. I think Patrick Stewart has not lost a step. He just is Picard. And I think the supporting cast did a good job as well. So that's all I think I should say about it. Just because there are a lot of spoilers even in this first episode. But you've got the basic gist of it and my review, so there you go. I'm going to leave Picard with a B+, and new episodes of that air weekly on CBS All Access. But like I said, you can watch the premiere for free on YouTube for a limited time. I'll put a link actually in the description of the video. So up next is Avenue 5, and this is on HBO. They're sort of pairing it with Curb Your Enthusiasm. They needed another half-hour comedy show to pair with the return of Curb. So here we are with Avenue 5. And it stars Hugh Laurie, Josh Gad, Rebecca Front, Zach Woods from The Office, and I think Silicon Valley as well, Susie Nakamura. So people that we've seen before, certainly in several different things. I mean, Josh Gad's been all over the place, and Hugh Laurie's done a few things since House. And this is the reason 911 Lone Star I think is the more higher profile show, so I would have done that second normally, but I think this one pairs well with Picard just because it's a sci-fi spoof, comedy kind of thing, and essentially Here's the plot of Avenue 5. I mean, there's not much of one, to be honest, but a massive systems malfunction sends the Avenue 5 way off course, and will take the ship 3 years to return to Earth, with only enough supplies to sustain people for about 8 weeks. So they have to struggle to figure things out, maintain order. We find out something very revealing at the end of the first episode, that one of the characters might not be who the others think they are. So the ship may be rudderless for the remainder. We don't know, but obviously the name is sort of a takeoff on Babylon 5. And Hugh Laurie, plays the captain. Josh Gad plays sort of this, billionaire type of person. I don't want to say he's like Trump-like. I think there's some shades of that, but I think he owns Avenue 5 for one thing, but he's like like kind of just a, hey man, like not a hippie necessarily, but just like doesn't care about anything because F it, he's got money, he owns everything. So he's just kind of a douche to everybody. I thought this show came at a bad time because you've already got a pitch perfect spoof of sci-fi shows that is in itself a great sci-fi show, and that's The Orville, which is coming back for a third season in about a year. So, I think it's a little bit of bad timing there. I think everybody is kind of unlikable here. Everybody sort of screams over each other a lot. It's very chaotic. I see what they're going for. I get it. I just wish I could root for somebody. But that being said, I did laugh a few times. I mean, it was not without jokes. I think more towards the end of the episode, as we got to know the characters a little bit more, is when I think it really was like hitting its stride. I'm not sure if I would be interested in watching more of these, but I don't know. I think based on the first episode, I didn't like it that much. But I see potential in it, especially because I think the first episode ended, like the last 5 minutes was when I was really getting to like it and starting to laugh at the humor. And Josh Gad, I have a love-hate relationship with. Like, when he first came on the scene, I really liked him. And then he started doing a bunch of the same things, and none of it was funny. And then he had to sing and everything in that stupid, nasally voice that, like, Olaf sings in sometimes, and he sang in The Wedding Ringer, and I hated that. But then I liked him in Beauty and the Beast, so I have, like, a love-hate relationship. So when I saw he was in it, I was like, alright, well, we'll see. And then they make his character so unlikable, that obviously he's kind of like the villain of the crew, because he's not really on the crew, I guess, as he's the owner, but so I guess since you're supposed to hate him, I was like, all right, well, I can do that a little bit more. Hugh Laurie, I think, is funny in this. It's so weird, like, to realize that before House, he was mostly a comic actor in England, which I didn't see a lot of his stuff, but he was hilarious when he hosted SNL. So I did not really care for the pilot that much. So I'm going to give Avenue 5 a C for now, but I think this is a show with potential. So we'll see where it goes. I don't know how much I'll stick with it. Maybe if I end up watching season 10 of Curb sometime soon, I will pair it with Avenue 5. But I don't know. It's not something I necessarily want to go back to, but I see potential in it. So up next, we're going to talk about 911 Lone Star. Now, if you watched my best and worst of the decade show that I did with a few of my friends, 911, the original show, was number 10 for me for best dramas of the decade. I really like that show. It's a little corny. It's a little soapy for sure. But I like the action in it. I like that it involves, both 911 operators and the fire department, sometimes even the police. And I think it's got a lot of working parts, and or a lot of moving parts that work, I should say. And I like the backstories of the characters. So now we have 911 Lone Star. Fox is trying to make a franchise. NBC has the Chicago franchise, and ABC has Shonda Rhimes shows as a franchise, and CBS has Chuck Lorre shows for comedies, and of course they have all the NCISs and all that stuff. CBS is nothing but franchises. So Fox wants one of their own, and so who did they get to head it up but Rob Lowe, one of the just most likable people there is. I just wrapped up his game show from over the summer, Mental Samurai. I binged it over like a 2 or 3 week period. Loved it. I think he's so likable in everything he does. And something I didn't realize, I saw this on... It was one of those things on YouTube where the actor like goes over all their characters from the last, 30 years. I've seen, John Goodman has done it, and Bryan Cranston, and I forget who does it. It's either GQ or Vanity Fair or something, but I think it might be GQ. But I saw one with Rob Lowe, and he was talking about like The West Wing and Parks and Rec and all this. And one of the things he said was, there hasn't been a TV season where I didn't have a regular show for the past 20 years. And I looked up his filmography, and sure enough, even if it was like a one-season show, like The Grinder, which I loved, man, he cranks them out, So now this is his new one, 911 Lone Star, and he plays, what's the character's name? He plays Owen Strand, who is a firefighter captain in New York. He learns in the very first episode, in one of the first scenes, that he's got cancer. And they also, he hasn't told anybody, but he was in the 9/11, attacks. He was, going through that as a firefighter. So because of that, he's got the cancer that he has not told anybody about yet. He tells one person by the end of the episode, but his team wants him to move to Texas, to the old Lone Star State, to put together a crew there. Because they're having a lot of issues, and one of them is about diversity, and his response is like, well, if you're looking for diversity hires, why are you hiring me, white man, Rob Lowe? But he's got a son as well, TK, who is gay, I guess, and because he was about to get engaged, they were talking about it in the opening, scene, and then we see, it's a dude he was engaged to, so I guess he's gay, and because of that, he relapses into a little bit of a pill addiction, because he finds out the man he was going to propose to was cheating on him. So Rob Lowe sort of takes this as, let's you and me go to Texas together, start a new life. I will be able to watch you and your drug addiction, and we'll be able to fight fires together and all of this. So that's kind of the backstory. Liv Tyler appears as well. She's sort of the other star, I guess. She's an EMS captain. And nobody else I really recognize. It's not, it's not quite as star-studded as 911 was when that first came on. But one of the great things about 911 is you need a strong lead to be the captain, and 911, the original, has Peter Krause, who I frickin' love from way back in the Sports Night days. Speaking of people that started their big TV careers on Aaron Sorkin shows, like Rob Lowe did with The West Wing. Of course, he had a movie career before that, but Aaron Sorkin kind of plucked him out of that, and I think he is the strong person that they need for this, because he is very likable, but he's got this very, sort of stern, fatherly nature about him that you need for the captain. So I think that was a great casting choice. He has good chemistry with the guy that plays his son, so I liked that. I think we'll see where it goes story-wise. It seems right now they're sort of just basically trying to do a retread of 911, which is sort of the NBC, CBS route to go about it. If it works, keep doing it. All those NCISs are the same. All the CSIs were the same. They were just set in different locales with different actors. And I guess that's kind of what they're trying to do with 911 Lone Star. But I'll tell you what, I'll be watching. I love the original. I don't know if this is as strong as the original yet. It's very hard to say, obviously, but I think they've cast it well. Liv Tyler's another one I go back and forth on, though. Like, I really liked her when she first came out way back when, like, Aerosmith videos, That Thing You Do, even Armageddon a little bit, even though I just watched that for the first time like 5 or 6 years ago. But like the early 2000s, she really started to grate on me, and I realized, okay, she maybe is not that good of an actress. I think it was like around the Lord of the Rings stuff. I was just like, all right, I'm not really into this. But she's fine here. They didn't give her much to do in the premiere because it was mostly about Rob Lowe's character and his crew, the Strand family, if you will. In fact, she doesn't even show up till like 2/3 of the way through. But she didn't bother me, so we'll see where that goes. But for now, I'm going to leave 911 Lone Star with a B. I think it's certainly got potential, but it may just end up being a carbon copy of the original 911. So we'll see where that goes. Up next is Little America, and this is on Amazon, right? Wait, I don't know now. Now I'm confused. No, this is on Apple TV Plus. Of course, I said that earlier. We haven't had a new show from them in about a month and a half. Or maybe there was one right at the beginning of January. Truth Be Told was the last one, the Octavia Spencer show, which was like, okay. But this is from the producers of The Big Sick, which is a movie I loved. It's Kumail Nanjiani from Silicon Valley and his wife Emily V. Gordon. And it's sort of got similar themes. Well, not really, I guess, because The Big Sick, they're already established in America. But at the very beginning, Kumail's family is trying to get him, to date and stuff. But here we see it's an anthology show. So, and he's not in it. They're not in it. It's just all different people every episode. But it's all stories of basically immigrants in the U.S. and what that means to each of them. And because it's an anthology series, I can't just base it on one episode because they're all going to be different. So I watched 3 of this one. Usually I just do the premiere episodes, but when there's an anthology, I like to give it sort of the benefit of the doubt here, and watch 3 episodes. And this is, I'll say it right now, the best offering Apple TV Plus has given us so far. Now, I did watch all of the morning show. It was uneven, and I enjoyed it. But I think I gave it a B or a B minus originally. I'd probably give the whole season of the morning show a B. It's good, not great. It's addictive, but maybe not that professionally good. It was just sort of all over the place. And they had a couple of good kid shows. Snoopy in Space was cute, but obviously based on existing stuff. I mean, this is original and funny and heartfelt. The first one was the strongest of the 3 for sure, but these are all based on true stories of people emigrating to the United States and their stories. In the first episode, called The Manager, we have a boy whose parents run a hotel and they get deported temporarily. So this kid is stuck running the hotel by himself. Meanwhile, he's like a spelling prodigy. So that was the first episode. I really liked that. Episode 2 was The Jaguar. That was about this gal who is sort of a troublemaker. She's a teenage kid. She's probably 14 or 15 or something, troublemaker. But she finds a love for the game squash and ends up playing professionally and ends up being very highly ranked in the world. So that was cool. Her coach was played by one of my favorite, he just shows up in things. Character actor John Ortiz. I know him most, I guess, from Silver Linings Playbook, but he's shown up. And then the Cowboy was the 3rd episode about a guy who really wants an internship and a teacher's aide position with his college, and he just doesn't fit in. So he is also taking classes to, sort of learn English and learn the ways of America a little bit. So he starts dressing up as a cowboy, and that turns out it kind of works for him. And anyway, they're all really cute stories. The first one I think is the best, but all of them were pretty consistently good. The first one I would give like an A or an A plus to. The other 2 I would say like maybe A minus, B plus, in that kind of range. And this is how many episodes? I think there's 8. And they're all up. Yeah, there are. There's 8 of them, and they're all up now. Like, Apple TV does that thing where it's like, some shows they'll do the first 3 episodes go up at once, and then the rest are just sort of once a week. This one, they decided to put up all at once, which I think makes sense because it is an anthology. So, you can kind of pick and choose which of the ones you are interested in, that you want to watch, and go from there. But I think Kumail Nanjiani and Emily V. Gordon, I think they are going to be strong forces for original content in the next couple of decades. I mean, The Big Sick was fantastic. If you've never seen that movie, definitely check it out. And it got a screenplay nomination at the Oscars. I actually thought they could have gotten some acting nominations too from that, specifically Ray Romano and not Helen Hunt. What's her name? She plays Mrs. Incredible, Elastigirl. Holly Hunter, not Helen Hunt. Holly Hunter. I knew it was something like that. But I thought they could have gotten acting nominations for that movie. But just the unique voice of Kumail in this world, as an immigrant and someone who has really made it in America in the last, 30 years or whatever. I mean, he's not that old, but I believe he is... first generation immigrant, if not second generation at most. And I think it works for him because it allows him to tell these stories that are not necessarily being told. I think there's a lot of there's shows out there. I mean, like Party of Five, certainly has the immigration plot line because of their parents, the new Party of Five, I mean, on Freeform. Their parents getting deported, and then same with One Day at a Time. But both of those are told from the Cuban standpoint specifically, which I think is interesting that they're both specifically of that nature. But here we see stories, from all over the place, and I think it works for it. I really liked this show. The best that Apple TV has to offer for sure. I give it an A minus. So we close with 2 kids shows, one on Netflix called The Healing Powers of Dude, and the other one on Nickelodeon on Saturday mornings called It's Pony. And you know me, I like everything. So figured I would give these a try. So The Healing Powers of Dude is about this kid who is 11 years old. He was previously only homeschooled by his dad, played by, speaking of That Thing You Do, Tom Everett Scott, who played the lead in that movie. One of my favorites, by the way, if you've never seen that movie. But he is now entering public school, and he is freaked. He's got a lot of anxiety issues that are, like officially diagnosed and stuff. So he really needs some kind of comfort to help him through school. So his family gets him an emotional support dog called Dude, who's voiced by That Thing You Do alum again, Steve Zahn. So, love seeing that. Anybody from That Thing You Do, I always like to get behind. However, I can't get behind this show quite as much as I wanted to. I thought it was a cute concept. And I like that they're being super diverse with it, because not only does this kid have severe anxiety, but, the 2 friends that he makes, one of them is in a wheelchair, and the other one is, super nerd, extroverted, but he is, I don't know, Latino or something. So, so it's a very diverse cast of kids, which I like, because I feel like that is really how high school, well, I guess middle school if they're only 11, but how school works. It's like you kind of gravitate towards, quote unquote, your kind. Like for me, it was, kind of nerdy kids, and we certainly weren't all white. We were diverse, but we were all nerds, that's for sure. So here we have a kid with a disorder, in this case anxiety, so it would make sense that he would gravitate towards some of the other, sort of outcasts of the grade, and make friends with them. And so that part's awesome to see. But here's the thing. First of all, I never really love talking animals. He doesn't talk so that the kid can hear him, but he talks, and unless you're like Garfield, like I don't mind it in cartoons, as you'll see in It's Pony, but you know, like Garfield could do it, but like I don't know, the whole like animals talking thing, I don't really like anyway. The jokes here are like super corny, even for a kid's show. Although for a kid show, and it's rated G, Netflix has started rating their TV shows like normal shows, so parents know what to look out for. So it's rated G, but like I don't know. They talk about him licking his balls, like in one of the early scenes. You know, the dog. I mean, and so it's you know got a little gross out humor, I guess. But the thing I dislike the most about it is like I can see kids with anxiety or other issues, you know, watching this and saying, okay, like I see myself in this kid, like I get it. But the problem is, like just doing a little bit of research on it because I was curious, it would be an extreme case for them to allow an emotional support dog into the school with the kid. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, it's good that they're showing this kid, and you know, other kids with anxiety disorders can see him and be like, oh, you know, I think the same. But the dog, I feel like it's going to make them think like, oh, well, that's cool. I can just get an emotional support dog and bring it to my school, and obviously that's not going to happen. So I didn't really like that part about it. What I did like about it, though, is that it's got like a little bit of an Ally McBeal vibe to it, where this kid, I think his name I said was Noah, has these like, you know, visions of what he looks like to other people. For example, like he's in the way of the girl in the wheelchair trying to get in the door in one of the first scenes, and you know his head gets like enormous because he just feels like, oh my god, like I'm so obvious, everybody can see me, you know, and this is embarrassing. And in another one, he's like melting into the floor like quicksand style because he feels, you know, so short, and you know, because he made a faux pas. Like I love that kind of stuff, and I think that helps kids see themselves more than anything. You know, I know when I watched Ally McBeal, I saw myself in her. You know, I was like, oh yeah, I have those sort of fantasies too. Or, you know, I sort of, if I am, you know, saying something dumb, you know, I have, you know, this cartoony sort of way about me in my head, you know. So I think for kids that's great. I think the dog part, which is sort of the whole purpose of the show, I think is sort of a letdown because I don't think it's funny, just in general. And then I just don't like the concept of kids watching that thinking, oh, I can now bring a support dog to school for my anxiety, and it ain't gonna happen. So I think the show is good for some things. I think it's great that it's showing some diverse children, and the whole, you know, inside your head kind of stuff I think is cool, and the acting's fine. I mean, I think he's a cute kid, whoever is playing Noah. Let me tell you his name, Jace Chapman. So yeah, I think he does a good job. So I'm gonna leave the healing powers of Dude with a B minus. I think there's some good about it, but not something I can fully endorse. But good enough, I guess. Next and finally, we have It's Pony, which is on Nickelodeon Saturday mornings, and of course they do the reruns, you know, kind of throughout the week. But this is a British animated show. And it comes to us courtesy of Ant Blades, who I don't know, unfamiliar completely, but we know some of the people in the cast. Cal Penn, Abe Ben Ruby, who I know originally from Parker Lewis Can't Lose. He played Larry Kubiak, and then later he was on ER, so he shows up here. Rosario Dawson has a voice, Bobby Moynihan. Not all of these are in every episode, so I haven't heard some of these voices yet, but basically it follows this girl, Annie, who is probably around the same age as Noah from the Healing Powers of Duty. She's probably about 10 or 11, I would say. Oh, it says right here, she's 9. Okay, so I was close. And she is working on her parents' farm and at her parents' vegetable stand. But she also has a pony, and she takes care of him. And he talks to her, and she can hear him, and others can hear him, which I don't mind as much for some reason. But also it's a cartoon, so I don't mind it as much then either. I don't necessarily like it when it's live action animals talking. But anyway, so Annie is voiced by Jessica DeChico, who I'm not familiar with, but she's done Adventure Time, and she voices Lynn and Lucy on The Loud House. So, she's got some Nickelodeon cred, that's for sure. And each one, like they do a lot of the time, each half-hour episode is two 15-minute shorts, which really, when you cut commercials out, they're like 11-minute shorts. And I think it works for it. I don't think these are necessarily strenuous plot points. But, I watched the first episode, Nosy Pony and Beatrice. Annie is trying to get its pony to stop being nosy. His name just is Pony, actually. So, and in the second episode, her friend Beatrice tags along with her one day after school because she's kind of, sad and alone. And so Annie's like, oh, well, you know what? Come hang out with Pony. He's so cool. But, that sort of ends in disaster as Pony runs off and ends up in a hot air balloon, so they have to run after him. I think It's Pony is a really cute show. It's not something I think I ever would have checked out were I not doing this video, unless my nephew was watching it. He's 7, so he's into a lot of that Nickelodeon. Or he might be 8 now, but he's into a lot of that Nickelodeon stuff. SpongeBob is always on when I go over there. And if they're not running SpongeBob, then usually The Loud House is on. So I think this is probably right in his kind of wheelhouse. I thought it was hysterical myself. I laughed several times. The drawing is very in line with a lot of the Nickelodeon stuff from the last 20 years. It's reminiscent of, things like Fairly Odd Parents and that sort of thing. It's not exactly the same animation style, but just in its look and vibe, it's got that going on for it. It reminds me a lot of some of the Saturday morning cartoons when I was a little bit older, not necessarily like the 80s ones, but some of like the early 90s ones, when they were getting a little more, sort of wacky and outlandish. Not that like the Smurfs isn't wacky, but just in real world concepts, because this takes place in the real world. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was funny. I think the voice acting is good. And this is one I will actually probably seek out more episodes of, just for a laugh every now and then. But yeah, I think it's a cute show. So I give It's Pony a B+. Well, we're just under an hour here, so we're going to cut it here. I don't like to make these more than an hour. But since I am a little bit behind on my shows, I know there's still some big name shows out there to get to that I want to catch up on, including this Lego building show that premieres, I think, tonight on Fox. But Cheer on Netflix is apparently all the rage, and I have not seen that yet. And there's a couple other things out there I feel like I wanted to tackle. Well, networks are bringing some new sitcoms into the mix. I know Jason Biggs is in one, and then Fran Drescher is in one on NBC. So I'd like to get to those as well. So all in the next week or two, I'll get to that kind of stuff. And like I said, these will be up a little bit sooner than once a week now because of just missing a week a few weeks ago. But also, you've got my Masked Singer reviews. I'm going to be talking about that again very soon, with my picks for Masked Singer. And then with the Oscars coming on Sunday, I'm going to have my buddy Justin here for some Oscar picks, some things and actors we thought got snubbed, and who we think will win and should win. And then at some point in the next week or two, now that the Oscars and basically the 2019 movie season is over, I'm going to have for you the top 100 grossing movies of the year and what I thought of them in a podcast as well. So a lot of things on the channel to look forward to, and I'll be back before too long with another TV news and reviews as well. So thanks for watching. Comment below about any of these shows, and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Bye.